Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
You're listening to a CNA podcast. There are some stories that make even seasoned journalists stop and go, huh? What's going on here? And this is one of those stories.
A question from Reuters. Why was Qin Gang removed from his post of foreign minister?
Xinhua News Agency has released information on this issue, and you can check it. Next question.
Good afternoon. Question from Agency France Presse. Why did the website of Ministry of Foreign Affairs delete all information related to Qin Gang? Thank you.
The information on the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is updated in accordance with relevant regulations. Next question.
The New York Times. Is Mr. Qin Gang still a state councilor? And if so, what are his duties and a role as state councilor? Thank you.
You just heard reporters at a press conference held the day after Qin Gang was removed as China's foreign minister in July. They're all clearly trying to get to the bottom of things, trying to make sense of how one of the country's most powerful diplomats was just erased. And he wasn't the only one. Just months later, it was Defense Minister Li Shangfu. He hadn't been seen in public since late August before he too was removed. So that begs the question, what happened to these ministers? Olivia Siong has had a front row seat to the mystery, and she joins me now. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Teresa. We're going to try and talk this through.
Yeah. We know in Chinese politics, nothing is left to chance, right? What was the reaction to the announcement that Li Shangfu was removed and that Qin Gang was stripped of his post? These are very high-profile men that we're talking about, and Li, now officially the shortest-serving defense minister ever.
I think here in China, in some ways, it was shocking, and in other ways, it was not. Like you said, Qin Gang and Li Shangfu, they weren't just ministers. They were also 2 out of China's 5 state councillors, which puts them at a higher rank than a regular minister in the Chinese cabinet hierarchy, so to speak. But remember, the removal of Qin Gang and Li Shangfu followed the same pattern. First, both disappeared from the public eye for weeks, 1 to 2 months, without any explanation. And it's not uncommon for disappearance to take place in China among high-profile figures, celebrities, business leaders, etc. I'm sure you have presented on this many times. I mean, just off the top of my head, you'd think of Alibaba founder Jack Ma, tennis player Peng Shuai, actresses Fan Bingbing, Zhao Wei, artist Ai Weiwei, the list goes on. So disappearances are really a sign that something's amiss or an investigation is ongoing, right? Basically, you've run into trouble with the authorities. Then came the rumors, speculation, swirls, or perhaps are allowed to swirl to some extent in this tightly controlled environment in China. For Qin, there have been allegations that he was involved in an extramarital affair with a Chinese television presenter. And for Li, reports that he was put under investigation for corruption, but no official confirmation about that. Only until recently, official confirmation about their fate. Have a listen.
According to Presidential Decree Number 14, according to the 6th meeting of the Standing Committee of the 14th National People's Congress of the People's Republic of China, decision dated October 24th, 2023. 1. Li Shangfu was removed from the post of State Councillor and Minister of Defense. 2. Qin Gang is removed from the post of State Councillor. 3. Wang Zhigang was removed from the post of Minister of Science and Technology, and Yin Hejun was appointed Minister of Science and Technology. 4. Liu Kun was removed from the post of Minister of Finance, and Lan Fo'an was appointed Minister of Finance.
Do you recognize where that, clip came from? I mean, working in Beijing, you probably may have heard of the primetime CCTV broadcast that's played out every night at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, 新闻联播, right? And that's the news telecast that, journalists here, observers really keep a close eye on for any new announcements. And so that clip you heard was the announcement that was made, but no explanation, no elaboration, just a straight up read by the news presenter on the outcomes of a bi-monthly meeting of the National People's Congress Standing Committee, which included personnel appointments. So Qin's removal as foreign minister was similarly announced at the previous meeting in July. And, this is the state of affairs now.
I want to go back to that press conference that we heard off the top where the foreign ministry spokesperson, Mao Ning, she faced a barrage of questions about Qin Gang. And, I have to say, I'm pretty impressed she kept her cool despite reporters asking the same thing again and again. And I'm surprised she took so many questions, actually. What was it like being there, Olivia?
There were I counted, looking back at the transcript, that we had, that there were over 20 questions that day out of the close to 30 maybe that were related to Qin Gang's removal. It was the top item on everyone's minds that day, the big why. Why was Qin Gang removed from his post as foreign minister? And the press briefing room, this is a regular daily briefing, was more crowded than usual. And the questions were mostly, if not all, from foreign media about Qin Gang. And even before that, though, we have to note that questions about Mr. Qin's disappearance had been going on for weeks already, but the foreign ministry spokesperson would always come back with similar responses, that there was no relevant information on this. Only at the start, they did say he had missed one of the meetings, or in fact couldn't attend the ASEAN meetings due to health reasons. Later on, they said that state media had published an official report. And perhaps from the questioning, you could hear that there was some frustration also among journalists that they weren't getting the answers that everyone had in mind, to questions that everyone had in mind. In fact, one of the journalists said, we have all referred to the state media report about Mr. Qin's removal, and it does not say why he was removed. Could you please explain why? And this was the spokesperson's response.
Everyone is very concerned about the appointment and dismissal of the foreign minister. I have noticed that several colleagues have raised many similar or even the same questions today. There are a lot of journalists here today, and I would like to give an answer to this question together. Regarding the appointment and dismissal of China's foreign minister, the Xinhua news agency has released the news. The relevant decisions made at the 4th session of the Standing Committee of the 14th National People's Congress and the decrees of the President of the People's Republic of China are clearly stated. I suggest you look it up. I don't have any more information.
So I think, as we heard there, the fact that the foreign ministry or officials weren't giving a direct answer is pretty telling in itself. Journalists had to ask the questions, and the fact that this was the response that was being received just really shows how opaque Chinese politics is.
The timing of Li Shangfu's removal, it was probably not an accident. He's been away from the public eye for 2 months. Why do you think officials decided that now was the time to announce his departure?
Well, I think part of it may be procedural, having spoken to some China experts on this as well. So the defense minister position comes under the purview of the State Council, and personnel appointments are to be approved by the National People's Congress Standing Committee. So this announcement was made at the bi-monthly meeting, although no replacement was named for the defense minister. But another thing with the timing was that this announcement was made just ahead of a high-profile security conference being held in Beijing. And this is a conference that's attended by military officials and representatives from around the world. It's seen as China's answer to Singapore's Shangri-La dialogue. And this event is typically fronted by the Chinese defense minister, who receives his foreign counterpart. And this time, there are a record number of delegates attending the event, including a US delegation. And given the state of China-US ties on the military front, some say that, it was important that this was cleared up and that talks would be able to continue.
I want to tackle the big question of why. Most people believe that Ting and Li, they were handpicked by President Xi Jinping for their roles. So what exactly went wrong then? Are these moves more indicative of inner levers being pulled as part of a major leadership reshuffle versus something they did?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's something that people have been talking about, China observers. And the issue here is that there's really no official information. And watching this, you have to kind of put the puzzle pieces together. At one point, we did hear health reasons being used by the foreign ministry to explain why Mr. Qin was absent from the ASEAN meetings. Similar answer of a health condition was given to Vietnam officials when Mr. Li had to pull out from a defense meeting. But then explanations of health reasons were then not raised again by the authorities. So then the rumors and speculation, continue. And if we were to talk about Mr. Qin first, according to some Western media reports by the Wall Street Journal and Financial Times, he was ousted after having an extramarital affair while being ambassador to the US with Fu Xiaotian, a news presenter with Hong Kong media Phoenix TV. Now, the foreign ministry was asked about this, but there was no direct response, denial, or acknowledgement of it. Although other observers and contacts that I have spoken to have said as well that, extramarital affairs are not uncommon in the political realm in China. And for this to be the reason for someone of such a high level to be axed would be surprising. So they think there is much more to this. The report by the Wall Street Journal also said that Qin was being investigated on whether the affair had compromised national security. And that's where we're at right now. Then there's Mr. Li. While there's been no direct explanation, again, observers also have been left to put the puzzle pieces together. Mr. Li, enjoyed a meteoric rise, was seen as being handpicked by Mr. Xi. He was previously in charge of the military's equipment department from 2017. One of the things that people are looking at is how in July the military launched a corruption investigation into hardware procurement dating back to 2017. Now, we have to note it was not directly linked to Mr. Li. Then we also saw state media reported that Mr. Xi, at a meeting with the military, also said that it is imperative to facilitate high-quality development of the armed forces through high-level governance. And if we were to read through the jargon of that, party discipline is key. And we know Mr. Xi has talked about building China's military into this world-class military by mid-century. So in August as well, we also saw that two of China's top generals overseeing its nuclear missile arsenal from the Army's rocket forces were replaced. No explanation as to why that has taken place. But observers are saying that this points to a broader investigation, possibly into corruption in the military, that Mr. Xi is keen to push forward.
Yeah, it's hard to believe these men with such outstanding CVs have come to end up in this position. Lots more ground to cover with Olivia. And after the break, we're going to take a look at the bigger picture and what these dismissals tell us about President Xi's grip on power. Stay with us.
Are you looking for ways to make your money work harder? Tips on saving, investing, or retiring early, perhaps? Or advice on big-ticket decisions like buying a house or owning a car? I'm Andrea Heng, host of CNA's top personal finance podcast, Money Talks. And these are some of the things we find out for you. Each week, I get a guest to share personal stories and answer burning questions that help you make sense of the latest financial trends. Go check out the complete Money Talks playlist on the CNA app, Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts.
Chinese authorities have failed to douse speculation over the whereabouts of Defense Minister Li Shangfu. Western media report that he's been placed under investigation.
Olivia, as our colleague Dawn said in that news bulletin clip, authorities have really avoided giving a full explanation over these removals. And it was not just Li and Qin, but the science and technology minister, the finance minister, they were also removed from their positions. How unusual is this lack of detail?
Well, I think the lack of detail is not necessarily surprising given the opaque nature of Chinese politics. And it has become increasingly difficult to really know for certain the inner workings of the top echelons of Chinese politics under President Xi, as he has a tight grip on things. But talking to Chinese experts on this, they have noted that the removal of such high-level officials and so soon after they have been promoted is really highly unusual and has not been seen in recent Chinese history. In fact, or since the post-Cultural Revolution period when Deng Xiaoping was removed of his post by Mao. So it is unusual that there's this lack of detail. And I think another thing is that we may never really know the real reasons as to why this has happened. Of course, there may come a time when there is an announcement about investigations that have taken place. So there is also a process that needs to be followed. But the true reasons, that's something we may never know.
You mentioned this, Xi Jinping, in the midst of an unprecedented third term as president of China. We're really in uncharted territory now.
There are several ways that people have read into this. Some say that maybe it shows some sort of instability in Mr. Xi's leadership, given that this is taking place so soon after he secured that unprecedented third term. And these are people supposedly that he had handpicked. But on the other hand, there are others who say that this shows how much in control Mr. Xi is, that he would even take out his own inner circle if they have not fallen in line or have run afoul of the rules. And we know that the anti-corruption campaign is a signature policy of Mr. Xi. So some observers are also saying that at the end of the day, it could even possibly be viewed as a win by Mr. Xi, as him going all out to weed out corruption at any cost.
What are ordinary Chinese people saying about these abrupt personnel moves?
Well, to regular folk, actually, this may not be an issue that's top of mind. Mm-hmm. Quite often when you talk to regular Chinese folk, many say that they feel Chinese politics is pretty far away from them. Also, we have to caveat that with people are also pretty careful about what they say about the Chinese leadership, given the current climate here. Also, as information flow is limited and controlled within the country, what people are hearing is limited as well. Although there are more perhaps who are interested in some of the rumors and speculation that have been allowed to circulate on Chinese social media. For example, Mr. Tin's alleged affair with the Chinese news presenter, that's being talked about. Mm-hmm. But people are also concerned about other broader issues like its economy and bread and butter issues that affect their daily lives more so. And so some observers feel that this may have more of an impact on China's international reputation, given the unpredictability and what seems to be like sudden changes in its leadership, rather than having an impact on its domestic population.
Mm-hmm. If we zoom out, the world, it's in a lot of strife right now. There's significant upheaval, wars raging in Ukraine and the Middle East. What do these removals mean for China's geopolitical interests?
Well, in terms of the foreign minister position, we know that a replacement was named quite quickly, Wang Yi, who had to take on his old job again, while also being the top foreign policy chief of the Communist Party. So he's really double hatting right now. And he's a familiar face among foreign leaders, having served in the role for a long time. And so that would indicate continuity, and he's seen as a trusted ally of Mr. Xi. So on the other hand, we still have not, at the time of recording of this podcast, have not seen a replacement for the defense minister, although this role is one of more of a military diplomacy kind of role. We know that Mr. Li, during his very short tenure, had traveled overseas. He met officials in Russia, India, Singapore, not so much involved in terms of military policy or the direction that its armed forces are taking. So the timing of this is also key given that high-level defense forum. Some are saying that, with the US delegation coming in, it actually may make it easier because Mr. Lee was sanctioned by the US and he had refused to meet his US counterpart, Lloyd Austin, because of this. And that has caused a chilling effect to military talks, given the array of issues that plague the two countries. So some are saying that this may actually help move things along and it may be good and allow someone who is not sanctioned to start talking to the US again. But in spite of all this, we have to note that while these leadership changes are shocking, ultimately it is President Xi who is firmly at the helm, and he is the one that is seen as the top leader of the military of foreign policy. And so we don't expect many changes in terms of direction, regardless of who is in charge, as Mr. Xi continues to have final say.
Yeah, and while we can't fully pull back the curtain on these personnel movements, the optics sure are intriguing, Olivia. Thanks so much for trying to make sense of this for us.
Thanks, Teresa.
The TV version of CNA Correspondent airs on CNA every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Catch up with them online, head to cna.asia. The team behind this episode is Saya Win, Clara Ong, Crispina Robert, and me, Teresa Tang. Thanks for listening.
Evolving education for a changing world. Expand your career opportunities and earn an MBA from University of Cincinnati Online Lindner College of Business. Designed for busy professionals, UC Online MBA is flexible, personalized, and supports students from application all the way through graduation. Get the world-class degree you deserve without sacrificing work or family commitments. Apply now at online.uc.edu/MBA.